Hello, everyone. This is Chuck Hogan with Your Best Life, and welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. So thank you for joining us tonight. I have the most amazing man. He's a brother from another. He is one of the, I'll say, top financial minds that I've had the pleasure of meeting in my years of business. And it's an amazing opportunity when you get to meet someone who actually is able to digest and provide information in a very salient way, which makes it so easy for everyone to understand. So I welcome and give to you my good friend, my co-founder of YBL, Dean Inniss. Dean, thank you for being here tonight, brother.
Well, thank you, Chuck, and it's my pleasure. As you well know, I hold you in the highest regard because you have so many of the traits that I aspire to, which if you're in business, you know that business is all about finding people that can fill the gaps in talent that you have, and you certainly qualify for filling my gaps and then some. So my pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
So grateful to have you here, Dean. I know when we were talking about different topics, I was really excited because you brought up some things that I hope people are understanding that the world is drastically changing. It's not just from COVID, but it really has to center around intelligence. And even more so than that, this ideology around artificial intelligence and how supercomputers and computing processes, the expanse. I mean, we could actually take the last 100 years and say in the last 10 years, we have dwarfed the level of progress and the speed with which technology is just advancing. And so tonight, you've been so gracious as to impart on us the opportunity of being able to look at some things and go, how can we look at what the next 10 years is going to look like for us? And what are some of the most defining technologies that you see? And is it all about high education and having to go into debt to actually have a college degree? So I'm going to turn it over to you, but I'm just going to ask you this. What jobs do you believe are going to be replaced by artificial intelligence?
Well, Chuck, I think that, you asked a whole bunch of questions there that are really important. And I think that we really have to start at where America is right now, so we can have a really good understanding of what that job picture looks like and why some of the analysis I'm bringing to tonight makes sense. And so I think it's really important for us to, in the world of social media, everybody's a millionaire. Everybody flies all over the world. Everybody has a Veyron for $2.2 million. And, the reality is, Chuck, you and I both know that's not true.
No.
We know most kids leave college owing $70,000 minimum in debt. We know that most people struggle to find a job that pays their bare minimum. We know that we currently have a housing crisis because people can't afford to buy a house because of interest rates and cost structures, supply chains, on and on. We know that people have a hard time paying for gas and groceries. So the reality is not everybody's flying everywhere. There's only a few people that post on social media. Half the time they're posting things that aren't really true. And so let's just spend just a couple of minutes talking about what our country looks like today in real time.
Please, because you know what? Perception's reality, isn't it? And
It is.
We're living in an artificially inflated, I'll call it an a la carte ideology. You don't have to even turn on the television set and watch something that you don't want to watch. In other words, it's not just programming. You get to pick what you're streaming. You get to hear, listen to what you want to listen to, your playlist. So everything has become very, very shrunk down.
Narrow. Absolutely. Absolutely. So look, here's some facts. Household income in the United States, 52% of American households make less than $75,000 a year. 52%. Then when you listen to the news, things start to make sense. Why is it so expensive to pay $4 for a gallon of gas? Why is it expensive to pay $6 for a dozen of eggs? Now you're starting to realize The median income in the United States last year, $70,784. This information comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. It is up to date. Okay. The top 10% income earners in the United States, $145,000. If you see TV and you see social media, you think, oh, everybody's making a ton of money. It's not true.
Right.
Top 5% income earners in the United States, $208,000. Okay. The net worth of the top 10%, the minimum, 1.3 million. If you're in the top 5%, 10 million. So even that rarefied air of the top 5% of the most profitable country in the world, $10 million. Wow. So when you think about billionaires and we hear about billionaires, there's 800 billionaires on the planet.
Right.
That's very small percentage. The average U.S. family has a savings account of $41,000. The average net worth of a family, including their 401k, their house, their cars, everything, $746,000. So if you think about those things, you go, well, maybe I'm not so bad off anyway. Well, I'm doing okay, right?
And that's the catch, right? Is that when we start getting this keeping up with the Joneses, this analysis paralysis, we start to go, I'm getting by, I'm getting mine, I'm doing all right.
Well, and I'm here to tell you that, my family was not very wealthy. I grew up, put myself through college working at Burger King for $2.70 an hour. Try that one on for size. I worked 3 jobs during the summer. You know what? The one thing I will tell you about this country is it is opportunity. Absolutely. If you decide to do it, whether you're working, to me, Burger King doesn't deserve to have a living wage. You know what Burger King was to me? Motivation to do something else. Yes. It's a starter job, flexible hours for kids. It's not a place where you're going to pay your rent. No, it's a place to learn things. And I learned a whole bunch from working at Burger King that took me to the level where I ended up running a company, $1 billion in assets, $450 million a year in revenue streams. I mean, you learn from every opportunity. Sure. And so I just want to go through some specifics because we need to clarify some things. Here's the median income through 2021 of what we think are great jobs. Management and professional services are at the top of that list. Mm-hmm. This includes doctors, this includes lawyers, all of those. And it also includes management stuff. So the median income for that is $75,868. That's per job, not per family.
Right.
For service industry, it's $36,700. For sales and office people, $45,000. For natural resource and construction people, $50,000. For production, transportation, and logistics, $41,954. So when you take those combinations and you look at the household income of $70,000, you can see how that comes together, right? You got somebody that's working in the service industry, you got somebody that's production or logistics or working in a factory, you get to $75,000, $80,000. Okay, that sounds really good, but it's not. It's not. And I'm here to tell you that the challenges coming in the next 10 years are something we better open our eyes about.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about, before we go to that, let's talk about the new collar jobs. These are jobs without a college education, but they have really good pay. And why do I bring these up? Because a lot of the jobs I just talked about had bachelor's degrees and master's degrees. Yes. And what are they paying? We have jobs now. We have access to information now. We have certifications now that give us the opportunity to make money without going to school for 4 years and getting 130 hours of education, of which only 30 hours is in your major.
Yep.
Think about that. You pay for 135 hours, but only 30 hours is in your major.
Amazing.
And you're paying 120 to 200 grand for that bachelor's degree. So if you break it down into useful information that you're going to use in your major, think about that cost structure. And if you're running a business like I do, I'd have kicked that to the curb a long time ago. So here's what I want you to think about. Here's opportunities that we should all start thinking about. Number one, you know what an elevator installer makes? $85,000 a year. You know what a web developer makes? $74,000 a year. You know how you can become a web developer? There are Microsoft courses that you can get certifications for $1,500. You can get all these certifications and knowledge online for less than $10,000 for a career that can pay you better than a bachelor's and a master's degree.
Absolutely.
Why? Because these are places where there's demand. Dental hygienist. Think about that one. You don't have to go to school. They'll train you. Yeah. Athena's talking about linemen making $100,000. Absolutely. Plumbers, $55,000. Radiation therapists, $65,000. They don't have to they can get an associate's degree at a community college for that. Pharmacy techs, $50,000 a year for learning and working under a pharmaceutical person. It's amazing. It's amazing the opportunities.
It is remarkable. And you know what? There's this concept, though, right? That, oh, I need to have a college degree. Oh, if I'm going to make something of myself, because that's the calling card to success. And the truth is, in today's climate, unless you're in a specialized field like an attorney or a physician that needs that level of education, there are so many things. I mean, listen, the guy who works on my car, the auto mechanic at the dealership, holy smokes, they're getting premium dollars. Some of these guys are earning, and depending on what level of classification car you're working on, they're making anywhere from $70,000 to $120,000 a year as a mechanic. It's remarkable.
It's amazing what we don't, you know, I can tell you this, growing up when I did, my parents were poor. They didn't have an education. You know, my mom worked in restaurants. My dad was in the military. And the thing was, get an education, get an education. I don't want you to be where I'm at, right? And so we did. And of course, things were different then, right? But really, even with my education, the thing that really took me was that running a business, most of the lessons I ended up learning were from Burger King. Inventory control, labor costs, management, how to handle the influx of customers, marketing, all of those things I learned there. Then I got my degree in economics, so I was able to apply those things in a bigger way. And I always tell people, don't get a business degree, get something specialized, get accounting, get economics, because you'll learn business through those anyway.
Right.
But what I really found was the inner workings of how things work determines your value.
Yes.
So we're in an economy now where a plumber and an electrician, nobody wanted their kids to be that. So they all went and got a bachelor's degree in business, right? And the plumber or the electrician who has an apprentice that works for him for 5 years is now making 6 figures.
Yes.
And they're not being replaced because we look down on those technical jobs. Well, I don't look down on any job that provides for a family in a good, responsible way, and better than some of these other options that are available. And we're going to talk about, as it goes forward, some of the opportunities that are evaporating that are directly related to those things that we talk about. So, you know, I from your standpoint, you have 2 kids in college, right? Why don't you give us a little assessment of what you think? And I'll tell you about my son, who's also in college, because I think it's valuable to this conversation.
So I know that universities are very proud of their tuition. One's at a private university, the other was at a state school. There is about a $40,000 a year difference between the private college and the state school. The only thing that saved our bacon is that he's very bright and ended up getting some scholarships, academic scholarships. But when you look at $68,000 a year as price point to attend this university, and it is a fine university, and he's a biochem major with a comp sci minor, I can tell you that he was on the pre-med path before, and it's something that my wife and I, after discussions, are moving him away from. And for the very reason of this conversation, service industries are what are going to be widely affected by this artificial intelligence that's happening. And it's able to compute, and process at such a speed that it will dwarf the human condition relative to even the quality of work that can be put out. Now, I'm only sharing this for one reason. When he went to school 4 years ago, and this is how fast technology is moving, as a freshman, what he was learning from his year to sophomore year, Dean, it's already antiquated information, and that was just from his freshman to his sophomore year. And it's the same thing. It's even faster now that he's a senior and getting ready to graduate. And this is how intelligent they've gotten in his fraternity. His breakout sessions are actually having Q&A with the alumni from his fraternity to tell them what the real world looks like right now out there, and what are the best optics and skill sets that they need to cultivate right now as they're graduating and moving forward. So to your point, we're trying to set our kids up to provide them with the types of occupations so it's probably going to be biotech, it's probably going to be in computer programming, so learning Python and things of that nature. Both of my kids are actually having their undergrad in comp sci. The other one is an engineering student. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the future holds. I know Chase is an extremely bright young man. And so, what has been his experience as a freshman? Because I know Marina and Chase are the same age.
Well, Chase started school and like you, very blessed. He got a full ride scholarship, right? And the scholarship was in engineering, honors engineering. Now, my son, he is picking a job where he wants to be a roller coaster or experience ride engineer. And so he's already changed his major specifics based on, what's happening, how it's going, and what he wants to do. And I'm here to tell you that the reality is those jobs that I just mentioned and a lot of service jobs are the jobs that are going to be in the future because they require human interaction and they can't be taken out by this. Is there a way to share my screen?
There is. Let's see here. If you go to the ad or underneath our screen, you'll see a plus sign. Let's see here. Do you see that, Dean, underneath our screen?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's because I haven't uploaded it, but
okay.
let me share some information with you guys. It's going to be really telling. And here's something that we need to start thinking about. Robotics will replace 40% of all jobs in the next 15 years.
Yes.
40% of all jobs. AI will reduce manager workloads by 69%. You know when that's going to happen, Chuck?
5 to 10 years.
The end of 2024.
That's insane.
Less than 2 years.
Yep.
Here are the top 12 jobs that are going to be replaced very soon. Customer service, bookkeeping and data entry, receptionist, proofreading, manufacturing, pharmaceutical labs, retail, couriers, doctors that specialize in surgery because now robotics are going to take over. They're more accurate. They're more sterile. Soldiers.
Yes.
Taxi and bus drivers. Almost 98% of taxi and bus drivers will be automated in the next 4 years. Market research and security guards. It's funny because you and I both know a guy that because of California raising their minimum wage, he actually was at the forefront of replacing security guards.
Yes.
By AI and guard techs. And it's amazing to see that actually happen yourself and then to put the stats to it. Here are the jobs that's more optimistic that are not immediately replaceable. HR managers, writers, lawyers, chief executives, leadership skills, scientists. Here's one for you: clergy,
Yes.
psychiatrists, event planners, graphic design, PR managers, software developers, and project managers. So if your kids are getting ready to go to school, maybe you want to talk to them about doing some of those type of occupations, because I think overall you're going to see that's going to be where things are lying. That's where it's going to happen, you know. And the bottom line is, all of those are respectable jobs. All of those are things that require the human spirit and creativity, and all of those things you can find fun in by working with each other and people. And also, those jobs are well paying.
Yes.
So despite the fact that AI and robotics are taking away a lot of jobs, I think it's forcing us, or it should be forcing us, to open our eyes to the opportunities coming and why we should talk to our kids about those things and what college really means and what it doesn't mean, and maybe reassessing tech schools, and maybe as a policy, identifying community colleges as places where we could do these things at a very good price.
Yes.
Without, leveraging our kids to the hilt. This doesn't make any sense.
It's interesting, Dean, that you say that, because when we start to get into behavioral sciences, which is something I've been passionate about for the last 30 years, it is interesting to see that there can be a prognosis that's provided. But you bring up something that's really important, that is the human condition, which is connection. And that artistry that goes into, so like if you're a graphic artist designer, the interesting thing about those is that those are going to be hybridized through AI as well. Like all the CGI that you're seeing, all these game development, you'll literally be able to go ahead and put into an artificial intelligence. And I'm already seeing this. I work a lot with architects and designers. You can have virtually designed spaces where they can take historical buildings, they can take current modern architecture, and using the formulations of architecture, basically abstract mathematics, calculus, geometry, the whole 9 yards, it will build you a building. It'll tell you how many girders, how many nuts, bolts, how many yards of concrete you need. It's the most remarkable scenario, because these things have been done so many times that it can pre-calculate and give you an estimation. What it can't do is emote the feelings that will go into this. And that's where we'll start to see that from a fulfillment perspective. So to your point, psychiatry, psychology, because there's going to be a lot of people with stress that are going to be wondering why their industry went the way the dinosaur, like that. It's going to be a Kodak moment. For those of you that are old enough to remember Kodak, they had theaters and stadiums, and they were one of the largest organizations. And all of a sudden it's like Kodak Eastman, and then all of a sudden, boom, where'd they go?
Cell phones with cameras.
That's it. Nothing is forever. So you bring up something constantly, which I love, and that is, it's not that the position is going to be out of line. It is literally more about understanding the human condition, and that is, how would you create more value? How do you actually, in that moment, create a scenario where, not that you're indispensable, that you're constantly learning?
Well, you know me, and I'm getting pretty close to 60. And one of the things that I always push myself to do is learn.
Yes.
The data that I bring to you is stuff that I come across because I'm constantly researching. And the funny thing is, I had been talking to you about meeting Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, and I met him in 1974. I hate saying that, but it's true. And we think that people do not have creativity in their minds. Oh. And here's a man that thought about interstellar travel, that thought about racial equality, that thought about social injustice, and put it together in a science fiction TV show. But what was incredible about that TV show is, do any of you remember this thing? It's a communicator. And because I'm old, I got one, and it does all the sound effects and everything. But really, in 1969, this was a cell phone that we didn't even think of yet.
Yes.
Right? that you could call anyone around the world without anything on it, and it's amazing that we have people that do that. And my hope and my dream is that people start focusing on what they can do instead of what they should do to make a living.
Yes.
And if you look at those 12 employment situations, they're all in circumstances that work with people to grow them out of the shell that they're in because they've been given false information. We need to understand that our schools should be teaching math and science, not because everybody should be a mathematician or scientist, but because we need to teach kids how to have deductive reasoning. We don't need to go away from art. We don't need to go away from music. Why? Because we had to develop that creativity in that part of our brain that can work with this so that we can solve problems that go beyond data input to a computer.
Yes.
We can think of problems to be solved. We can identify courses that we need to take. And AI, it's amazing because one of the jobs that I had researched in an article from January said writers don't have anything to worry about. Well, last week, an AI program got launched that can literally write a book with emotion, with these things, catering to the client data that it has in it. And I thought to myself, the good news is no one's safe. And instead of that being the bad news, it's the good news. You know why? Because it's going to change the mindset of mankind to saying, I can't live the way I've lived in a shell. I have to open my mind to new ideas. I have to open my mind to new technology. I have to open my mind to what can happen not in 30 years, but in 2 years.
Yes.
As we see management workload dropping by 69% by the end of 24. That's not 5 years down the road. For somebody my age, that's like that. So, I think it's really important that we discuss this. It's huge because our best life is really about looking at the future and looking at not is limiting us, but is really giving us the tools through AI, through robotics to unfeather ourselves from things that are medial, that we really don't have to do to grow outside the human experience. That's what I think.
Well, and the reaction time, like what you were saying, imagine soldiers, no one needs to die. Imagine, a fireman that the robot can go into the building. It can break down the door. It can actually carry a person out. Imagine for a police officer that it's virtual, that the robot's there, but it's manned by someone, so to speak. So it's a drone or what have you. My dad, after 30 years in the military, was, look at all the drones and the technology now. There are unmanned vessels, there are unmanned aircraft. But to your point, in an earlier conversation that we had today, Gene Roddenberry, visionary. I mean, handheld lasers. Yeah, we use them for everything. We use them for, skin resurfacing at this point. We use them for surgery. One of the things that my son was looking at is nanite technology and how robots, small microscopic robots that will be injected in your body, they're programmed and they can go ahead and remove blood clots. They can go ahead and, repair aneurysms and different things. It's like, whoa, this is like mind blowing. And that's all biotech. So there's a premise to this though, too, which is someone's going, well, I'm not going to let some robot work on me. I'm not, it's almost like the movie I, Robot. If you have prejudice towards the technology, and to your point, we get to embrace the technology. We get to embrace the opportunity in the human condition that this can actually inspire us to move forward with more efficiency and more efficacy. But I have a question for you, Dean.
Uh-oh.
No, this is because it just popped into my being for a moment. And I was like, okay, with all this instantaneous gratification that's coming from these nuances through AI, because again, we learned today that an entire business prospectus, and not just the prospectus, the entire business plan could be facilitated and implemented in 6.5 hours. And that's going from concept to launch, to branding, to funnel, to execution, and on the internet through a portal and collecting money that fast. And it's like, whoa, I literally saw a haiku written because my daughter went through this exercise about a month ago where the English teacher said, hey, you're going to write a 14-line haiku. And here's the interesting part about it. You're going to do it with a Taylor Swift song. And it was like, dude, we sat there for hours racking our brain, and she came up with a brilliant one. This wrote it in 15 seconds. So this AI tech that's coming out, this, chat, GPX, whatever, GPT, there's so many out there. But here's the bottom line. Do you feel that with all this instantaneous information that we're losing some of our resourcefulness because everything is coming so quickly and without any forethought on our part other than giving it some metrics to search by?
Well, that's why I look at it from an economic standpoint, because if we open our eyes and realize that this change is coming, then instead of saying, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a living? You say, what am I going to do? How am I going to make a living? And that's where I think entrepreneurship is going to be the wave of the future, because we have to be more creative in jobs. They're not going to be out there. So
Right.
It's going to take us back to the 1930s at the, height of the Depression, where people had to come up with ways to make money. They had to be ingenious in how to make money. They had to figure out how to communicate and barter with their neighbor because there was no cash flow coming in. And then World War II happened. And what happened to our culture? We came up with manufacturing methodologies that expedited things that we couldn't get, not only to produce tanks, Jeeps, and all of that, but to get it across the ocean. And we did that in 2 to 3 years, Chuck. And so I look at it this way. I go, damn it. If I can tell people what's going on and you can tell people what's going on and they see it, they start thinking, I got a couple of years. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? And we belong to an organization, YBL, that has these people with forethought that are looking at ways to generate revenue, to help society, to help culture, to have a green planet, to do all of these different things. And guess what? If you spend time thinking about that, instead of thinking about, oh, I hate driving to work, I got to spend an hour in the car, and I really don't like my job, I can't wait till Friday at 5:00 so I can have Miller time. I mean, I've seen it. Yeah, I've been in business for 40 years. Why don't we help transition people by virtue of reality into things that can happen? And here's the positive part of it, Chuck. Here's some information that's really great. Out of 189 countries where you can start a business on the planet, the US is number 6 in easiest to start a business. Number 6. In 2021, 5.4 million new businesses started. We see this social media revolution. There's a guy that lives in a multi-million-dollar house, and he was a YouTube star. He didn't go to school.
Right.
Made $4 million last year. And so I'm seeing in our youth creativity that is different than what we consider creativity, but ways to interrelate to each other, to market products, to do all of those things. So there's right now 50 million content creators, 50 million of them. You know what that market is right now? $104 billion market today.
Sure.
And I suggest to you that that market's going to continue to grow because people make buying decisions based on how they're influenced.
Absolutely. And you bring up another point, the emotions and the feelings that go along with it. Because again, investments is that's a non-emotional, it's supposed to be, but I don't know of anyone that's $100,000 that's not emotional about it. So to that point, when we start to look at influencers and what really is an influencer, what really is someone in social media, is it content of character or is it perception? As we get into this whole alternative universe in AI, the metaverse and Facebook, jumped that whole meta program. The concept was almost like Ready Player One. You're going to have an avatar. You'll be able to go ahead and you won't have currency. And we're moving towards that with blockchain.
Credits.
Yeah,
Another
credit.
Gene Roddenberry thing, right?
Absolutely.
Universal money, credits.
That's it. And if you even look at it, no one said, what am I getting paid? It wasn't like Scotty's an engineering captain. I can't make her go any faster. And you're going, hey, what am I getting paid this month? It's like that wasn't the question. The question was, you are already being cared for because based on the value that you create for your community. And so the currency is still the same. It's just that the exchange rates are different. And to your point, this is moving at such a fast pace. I mean, how do you explain, an influencer? And I go, well, in what? There are certain people I've never heard of, but to your point, they're making $4 million. There are people making it dwarfed by that. And at some point in time, it comes down to one simple thing: perception. Right now, we can all live and need a dose of reality because life is not going to get less complex. In fact, I will say it this way: it'll become more convenient. And in that convenience, you may find some complexity because the human condition is such that we really have a desire to feel a certain way. And so just understand how you need to feel. If that's productive, if that's valued, if that's necessary, but how about appreciative, respected? Because you and I had this discussion a long time ago, and I'm going to circle back to it. People are like, "Oh, Chuck, I'm looking for work-life balance." And I say, baloney. You're looking for some harmony. And there's a big difference because you're not splitting your time 50-50. It's the same thing with this. If you get, it doesn't mean that you're doomed. It means, how are you going to pivot? Where are you looking at taking these skill sets and what you learn? And to your point, and we believe in this equally, and that is mentor strategizing. Get with people who are living that lifestyle now, who are forward thinkers. They're the divergent ones. They're the Elon Musks of the world. They're the Mark Cubans. They're people who are going way outside the fray. And people go, oh, they're nuts, they're crazy. I go, yeah, they're a little nuts and they're a little crazy. Embrace the geek in you because that's what's going to get you further, farther, faster.
The
Not
geek? What do you mean? What are you calling me, Chuck?
Hey. I hold a can around my office. You don't need to see all my paraphernalia. But to your point, we get to engage in this beautiful thing called life. And right now, there are so many people, and at Your Best Life, we have this ideology, which is don't live in survival. How would it feel to thrive? How would it feel? Because we have a very dear friend, Preston Brown. He goes, progress equals happiness. And I know where he got that from, Mr. Dean Inniss. And here's the other side of that. What feeds progress is opportunities, possibilities. When you feel like there's possibilities, you feel untethered. You feel like you're able to grow. But when you feel like the handcuffs are on you, and this is as good as it's going to get, oh, I don't have any choice. This is what I'm trained in. This is what I do. Guess what? To your point, there's all these trade schools. It's like, when would now be a great time to potentially learn trade?
It goes back to a couple of things. Number one, society has to change our way of thinking. We don't need to look down on people that are successful in any methodology that they're successful. Agreed. Number two, we have to realize that what we're doing in schools is wrong, and we have to make sure that our educators understand it. They don't understand what's coming. They only understand what some union is telling them to do based on some criteria that they felt was good. Well, the reality is we've fallen from number one in education to in the low 20s and high 30s. Yes. And you know why that is? Because we've abandoned some core things that talk about deductive reasoning, yes, which will never go out of style. And yeah, it's tougher to teach those things, but it's more valuable. Also, why don't we teach ambition? Why don't we teach growth of business? Because let's face it, I talked about being self-employed, and that's the way to go. But here's the reality. And the stark reality is 80% of businesses fail within 2 years, 90% fail in 4. Thank God a lot of those people don't give up the first time. Exactly. But the reality is they have to go through that learning curve of failure. They don't need to go through that. We could talk about some really basic things that will teach somebody how to be successful. One, when you're going into a business, do your research. Everybody knows what they do well. I'm going to go into business. I'm really good at this. And they're probably really good at it, but they're really bad at business. Let's teach them how to run a business so that they can do what they do and have a good business around it. Let's teach them about capital. Let's teach them about demographic research. Let's teach them about demand psychology. Let's teach them about opening in the right market, not the wrong market. Let's teach them about having good partnerships and good mentors. Let's teach them about masterminds when they're teenagers, not
Yes.
when they're 50 years old, trying to find a better life. Let's teach them about finding a better life now.
Right.
Let's do that.
Teamwork and collaboration.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that. You know, they use this phone. It has access to more information than ever.
Yes.
And they spend their time on social media.
Hey, and I'll tell you what, my prayer, my hope is that they use it to actually use the calendar and schedule and reminders. And I was like, did you know?
Or notes on contacts so they know what people do for a living and how they can impress them. You know, it's a beautiful thing that we need to do. And I would kind of, I want to wrap this up. I know we only have a few more minutes, but I want to talk about a couple of things that we can do as parents.
Yes.
As mentors, as students. I hope that there are students watching this because they already know that times are changing. And instead of looking at old folks and saying, you don't know what's going on, they need to start preparing for what's going on.
Yes.
And start understanding that it's going to change at a rapid pace. And so I just want to say a couple of things, right? Don't hide your head in the sand and hope it'll all go away or hope it'll all work out. It doesn't. Our schools need to be thinking about the future. And you know what? They're not going to change until we change them. We can complain about politics. We can complain about Republicans, Democrats. It doesn't matter. They're only there because we put them there.
That's
until we decide enough's enough and put the right people in place, we're going to have these problems. The traditional bachelor's degree may no longer be necessary. And I submit to you, it is overpriced. And the reason it's overpriced is because we came up with this thing called student loans that you don't have to qualify for. And what it has become is indentured servitude for our kids because they'll go to a school that should have not be charging $40,000 a year for tuition, but they can't. Because when you go into your freshman orientation, the first thing they talk about is getting a student loan.
Yep.
And so we need to stop that. Jobs that don't get replaced are tied to leadership. Leadership.
Yes.
Employee engagement. Energy. Emotion and creativity. Those are all things that we're born with as human beings. Yes. Let's nurture those instead of quelching them. Instead of teaching people how to think, we teach them how to think.
Yes. That cultivation is so important, Dean. And to that point, the human condition is, we know this by just virtue of having grown. Proximity is power. You know, playing together, frolicking, having fun, learning, getting the lessons. We learn so much faster. And it was interesting watching my kids grow up because I still have one in high school. And so what they are encouraging now more than ever before, but this is where it gets real interesting and you can start to see the leaders so quickly. They'll start doing community projects. And the ones who are the leaders are the ones that have no problem stepping in and organizing and trying to create continuity. But you quickly start to find the ones that are like, they're just going to sit back and let the other smart kids do the work. And it's like, wow, interesting. When I had this conversation with my youngest daughter, it was like, who's the smartest one in the group? Because are they helping influence? Are they contributing? Because there's a difference. There's those that sit back and go, hey, it's a group grade. I'll do the least amount I need to do in order to get the outcome that I feel I deserve. Then you have the others, they have that fire in the belly and they will not do subpar work. So they are going to go ahead and be driven to excellence. And I go, wow. But this is where I get concerned a little, brother. In this effort to push so hard, you know, coming from a Japanese culture, I can tell you this, that the pressure to perform is so huge. And it's sad, but it is really true because we start to see that people will sacrifice their own well-being for the potentiality of being able to move forward. It's
Well,
amazing and sad as well.
I would look at it this way. Okay. There's going to be impacts on how we live, right? More of us work remotely. Interpersonal relationships are going to be strained because we don't have access to each other. Focus on creative processes and experiences are all going to be at the forefront.
Yes,
And I would submit to you that you could come up with a business that actually empowers those characteristics,
absolutely.
bringing people together remotely and putting together a community situation where they could come share coffee, do those things, and then go out. Providing a software package that does similar to that, but then also knowing that does not substitute for human contact
Correct.
and providing spaces for those types of things to go. I mean, to me, and I'm an old guy, there is a lot of ways that we can really go forward and tie up these problems. But the first thing, Chuck, and I hope that we kind of started this conversation today, is awareness. You and I preach. We studied martial arts and everything else. And one of the things that we talk about often when you were talking about balance is there's never really balance, right? Because yin and yang are constantly turning. Sometimes yang is winning, sometimes yang is winning. But harmony is knowing that that's going to take place.
Correct.
Today, I hope that we elevated people's awareness of what's coming. So instead of hiding in the sand, we can start looking for solutions or looking for opportunities, because that's where human beings are always successful and will be successful.
It really is the adage of the iceberg, right? As long as you can start to see, it's like, oh, it's poking out at the surface. What you don't realize is that 85 to 90% of the mass is below the water, what you just can't see. It's changing your optics and being more aware that there's opportunity all around you. Part of it is where you're living. If you're willing to dim your light, and we actually have a friend that talks about this, living like a laser or living like a light bulb. So many of us are so myopic because someone that we trusted or someone that actually cares and loves us, and they do, said, hey, get a degree. Hey, you're going to be a physician. Hey, you're going to go in the family business. You're going to be an attorney. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Okay, that's great. That's wonderful that they have that aspiration for you. But if you're not feeling it and you're not driven and you're not passionate about it, a job is just above broke, just over broke. Okay? A career, a passion project, something that's going to move you, spur you, grow you, cultivate you. Oh, the fulfillment that comes in that and the connection that you get is really beyond reproach. And so, Dean, to your point, being able to look at this and say college isn't the only way. There are occupational schools with, irrespective of what someone believes, even with artificial intelligence, I believe that nurses are going to be imperative moving forward in healthcare. They provide so much bedside manner and connection to the human condition of growth and health. You'll spend more time with your nurse than you'll spend with your physician.
Well, we know somebody that's going to be replaced by a computer because you put in your blood type, they're going to tell you what's wrong. And then once it's fixed, you need that companionship.
Absolutely.
And I think, when I guess 30 years ago, I never thought we'd be talking about things like this. I always thought it was science fiction. But now, being the economist and forcing everything I do to be planned out 3 to 5 years, I'm excited to see where we'll be in 3 years, where we'll be in 5 years, and how I can help people be prepared for that. And I hope that this short time that we spent together, and thank you for this opportunity, gives us that ability to elevate people's thought process.
Dean, you've been amazing. This conversation has been remarkable. I look forward to having you back again. It's always so much fun to be able to banter back and forth like this.
Well, and I want to we got some really good comments. I want to thank people for joining us, and I hope that they spread the word that people should watch this, because it's not important because of Chuck and Dean. It's important because of the information of what's coming, and that's what we need to focus on.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, Read it, download it, live it.